The Imperial Council Chamber was built to humble anyone who entered it. 100-meter-high dome of black stone arched above, studded with constellations of embedded crystal. Sunlight from Vorath Prime's twin stars bled through angled skylights, painting the floor in gold and silver. In the center, a circular dais rose like an island in a sea of polished obsidian. On that dais stood an old warrior, his chitin scarred and dulled to a matte gray. His secondary arms twitched at his sides, a habit of his species when memories clawed at them. The translator nodes clicked in his throat before his voice reached the chamber's amplifiers. You do not want to fight them. The tone was not a plea. It was a verdict. High Strategos Vale Corix lounged in his elevated seat, silver-scaled fingers steepled. His eyes, pale and lidless, regarded the veteran as if studying a flawed artifact. "And why?" he asked, his voice smooth and deliberate. "Would the Empire fear a single backwater species barely a century in the stars?" The warrior's mandibles shifted. "Because they do not break when they should. I fought beside humans against the KRVA swarm. When cornered, they do not surrender. They become something worse than the enemy. They fight like it's the only thing they've ever done." Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, curious. Others chuckled, their jeweled robes swaying. Captain Elias Vance stood at the periphery, the only human in the room, his Earth Fleet uniform immaculate but unadorned. He'd been ordered to observe, which in Imperial politics meant stay silent. But he knew this wasn't a warning the Empire would take seriously without a human voice. He stepped forward. "With respect, High Strategos, the veteran isn't exaggerating. My people don't seek war, but we've never shied from it. When pushed, we adapt faster than most species can react. That's not a boast. It's a caution." Vale's gaze shifted to Elias, measuring him. "Adaptation? Every species claims the same. We are the apex civilization. You are guests in our dominion." Elias's jaw tightened. "Guests who fought and won wars before we had faster-than-light drives. Against odds you consider impossible." A thin smile touched Vale's lips. Romantic tales for primitive ears. He turned to the council. "Colleagues, let us not confuse battlefield grit with strategic supremacy. The human fleet is small. Their colonies are scattered. A decisive strike would pacify them before they realize the extent of their defiance." The insectoid veteran's secondary arms rattled against his chest plate, a sound like dry bones. "You think numbers matter. You think steel alone wins wars. You have not seen what happens when they lose everything but the will to hurt you." A dozen hollow displays lit in midair, projecting maps of human space. Vale gestured, and icons representing Imperial fleets moved like an inevitable tide. "We cannot allow an uncontrolled military culture to grow unchecked on our frontier. Preemptive action ensures stability." Elias scanned the displays. The Empire's plan was already in motion. Fleet deployments labeled as training exercises pressed dangerously close to Earth sphere. He recognized one formation by its transponder code, the 7th Aurelian Arm, veterans of the KRVA campaigns. This wasn't posturing. It was preparation. He spoke louder now, voice cutting through the murmurs. "You think this will be clean. It won't. Even if you win, you won't like the cost. You'll leave a scar on your empire, so deep your grandchildren will inherit it." Vale's tone cooled. "And you think to lecture the Empire on the cost of war?" Elias met his eyes without blinking. "No, Strategos. I'm telling you the bill will come due, and you won't be able to pay it." A ripple of tension passed through the chamber. Some alien delegates exchanged uneasy looks. The insectoid veteran gave a small, sharp click of approval. Vale stood, towering over the dais, ceremonial armor catching the light. "This council will decide the matter by vote. But I will say this. Empires are not preserved by hesitation." The vote was swift. 2/3 in favor of security measures against humanity, a euphemism no one bothered to explain. Elias turned away before the formalities ended. The chamber's great doors opened at his approach, the warm glare of Vorath's sun spilling in. Outside, the air smelled faintly of ozone from the passing maglevs. The insectoid veteran limped up beside him. "They will not listen," the alien said without preamble. "No," Elias replied, But Earth will. The veteran's mandibles twitched, perhaps in a grim smile. Then prepare them. Make them ready for the day the Empire learns fear again. Elias didn't answer. His mind was already running the next 20 moves. The coded messages to send, the trade convoys to reroute, the war games to quietly escalate. He had seen what the Empire could do. He had also seen what humanity became when the enemy underestimated them. And Vale Corix had just made that mistake. The corridors of the Imperial Diplomatic Quarter were a study in intimidation, vaulted arches carved with the conquest of the Aurelian Empire, each scene etched in gold leaf. Captain Elias Vance walked through them without slowing, the echo of his boots lost in the hum of maglev lifts and distant chatter. His expression gave nothing away, though inside his thoughts were already dividing into contingency trees. The council's vote had made one thing certain. War wasn't possible. It was scheduled. The exact hour was just a formality. In his assigned quarters, spacious by human standards, but decorated in the cold geometry Aurelians favored, Elias keyed the secure transmitter embedded in his desk. The console's display flickered to a green-tinted encryption field. He leaned close, speaking in clipped phrases that would read as harmless to automated scans, but carried meaning to the right ears. Trade winds shifting, storms possible in the Terran Gulf. Mariners advised to bring all ships to deep harbor. The coded message would reach Earth's Defense Council within hours. Admiral Sarah Holt would understand immediately. Imperial fleet movements weren't drills. KG Rao would read the political undertone. The storm was engineered. He closed the channel and burned the buffer logs. A chime sounded at his door. It opened to reveal a tall, broad-shouldered human woman in a dark naval uniform. The collar bore no rank insignia, only a silver pin, Earth's way of denoting officers working in sensitive assignments. Admiral Holt, Elias said, keeping his voice neutral, "I thought you were still on Luna." "Fleet inspection," she replied, stepping in without waiting for an invitation, "and a little face-to-face damage assessment." From the council session, her mouth twitched. "I read the transcript. Corix doesn't bluff. Elias, he's positioning. He's already moved the 7th arm into proximity. They'll be joined by at least 2 more fleets before the month's end." Hope paced, the floor lighting tracking her steps. "And Earth has a tenth of their tonnage. Not counting what we can build in secret," Elias said. "Not counting unconventional assets." Her eyes narrowed. "You mean the kind that will make the Empire scream about dishonor?" "I mean the kind that works," Elias replied. A discreet buzz interrupted them. The door sensor recognized another visitor. Elias allowed entry. A short, wiry figure with gray-green skin slipped inside, moving with quiet precision. His clothing was civilian, but his eyes marked him as a soldier. "Commander Threx," Elias greeted. The alien gave a nod, his voice a low rasp. "I hear the Strategos intends to make a lesson of your species. I fought beside you once. I remember who learned from whom." Elias gestured to the table. "We'll need allies who don't mind standing on the wrong side of the Empire's line." Threx's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "I have suggestions." Over the next hour, the table filled with maps, fleet disposition data, and handwritten notes in multiple languages. Holt contributed knowledge of shipyard capacities and asteroid mining schedules. Threx offered contacts in 3 border systems who looked the other way for the right incentive. Elias stitched it together into something dangerous, a preparation plan disguised as normal commerce and security measures. When they finished, Holt folded her arms. "You're talking about baiting them into underestimating us." Elias met her gaze. "They already do. We just make sure they keep doing it until they've committed too far to pull back." Threx's claws tapped the table. "Dangerous game. The only kind worth playing when you're outnumbered," Elias said. Holt exhaled sharply. "I'll get the yards running triple shifts. Civilian shipyards, too, under the pretense of freighter production." Elias added, "And I'll keep feeding the Strategos just enough human stubbornness to confirm his prejudice. He thinks he understands us. We'll let him think so, right until it costs him everything." 2 days later, Elias stood in the viewing gallery of the Imperial Spire, the tallest structure on Vorath Prime. From here the city spread in concentric rings, living terraces, military zones, and industrial sectors divided by canals of liquid light. The Empire's power was visible in every angle. Beside him, Vale Courts admired the view as if he owned the stars beyond it. "Captain Vance," he said smoothly, "our exercises near your colony seem to cause unease." "They're very close to inhabited systems," Elias replied, keeping his tone even. "Proximity is the nature of readiness," Vale said. "Surely your people understand the value of preparation." Elias turned to face him fully. "I think they understand being surrounded." Vale's pale eyes gleamed. "Then perhaps they should consider the benefits of joining fully under Imperial defense arrangements." Elias smiled without humor. "We'll keep our own arrangements, thank you." The strategos' expression hardened slightly, though his voice stayed calm. Pride is an admirable trait in moderation, dangerous in excess. Elias didn't flinch. "Funny, we say the same about empires." For a moment, the two men regarded each other in silence, the city's endless hum beneath their feet. Then Vale inclined his head faintly, as if filing away the exchange for later use. When Elias left the spire, he knew he'd achieved what he wanted: confirmation. Vale wasn't bluffing. The Empire's posture was shifting from political pressure to military countdown. That night, Elias's encrypted channel carried another brief, harmless-sounding transmission. "Fishing season begins early. Nets will be needed." It would tell Earth to ready its intelligence networks, to cast wide, gather everything, and prepare for the hunt. In the quiet that followed, Elias stared out at Vorath Prime skyline, the twin moons cutting silver arcs through the night. He thought of the insectoid veteran's words, of the grim weight in his voice when he'd spoken of humans in war. The Empire believed they were dealing with an ambitious but predictable species. They were wrong. Elias intended to make sure their mistake would be the most expensive in their history. The freighter mariner's grace drifted in the darkness between the outpost Vega 9 and the Sole Frontier. It was a slow, dependable vessel, hauling foodstuffs and machine parts. Nothing that warranted a military escort. The crew never saw the weapon that killed them. On Imperial records, the incident was logged as an unprovoked human attack against a civilian supply ship aiding frontier colonies. The data packet spread through news channels in hours, complete with grainy, fabricated footage of a human destroyer firing first. The message was clear. Earth had committed an act of war. Elias Vance read the official release from his quarters on Vorath Prime, the falsity so blatant it almost seemed like a dare. The strategos wasn't hiding behind diplomacy anymore. He was handing the Empire the pretext they needed. He opened an encrypted channel to Admiral Sarah Holt. Her face appeared, jaw tight, eyes burning. "They've already broadcasted on every Imperial network," she said. "Frontier worlds are howling for retaliation. They're not going to wait for an investigation," Elias replied. "No," Holt agreed. "They're moving fleets now. 2 arms inbound toward Vega 9. Pull all civilian shipping from the corridor. And Sarah, don't meet them head-on. Not yet." Her mouth twitched into the faintest of smiles. "Wasn't planning on it." By the time the Aurelians reached Vega 9, the system's defense grid was dark. Not destroyed, powered down. Imperial commanders mistook it for panic. They advanced without caution. In the shadow of the gas giant Veres, 3 human corvettes waited cold and silent, their hulls coated with chameleon plating scavenged from captured KRVA tech. Their heat signatures bled into the planet's own radiation. Commander Threx's voice came over the shared channel. "They're in the kill zone." Admiral Holt's tone was calm. "Light them up." The corvettes came alive in an instant, targeting arrays locking on, rail batteries spitting tungsten slugs at hypersonic speeds. The first Imperial cruiser never raised shields. The second managed 2 seconds before its reactor went critical. The third ship turned hard, trying to flank, but a burst from Holt's lead corvette gutted its propulsion. It spun, crippled, into Veres' upper atmosphere, vanishing in a streak of orange fire. The human ships vanished just as quickly, slipping behind the planet's shadow before the rest of the Imperial fleet could triangulate. By the time Aurelians reestablished formation, they'd lost 3 warships in a system they'd been assured was undefended. In the Imperial Spire, Vale Korich reviewed the battle report with an expression of icy calm. His aides whispered about hidden weapons and illegal technology, but the stratego said nothing for several minutes. Finally, he turned to the room, send in the 10th arm, and broadcast a revised timetable for the occupation of Seoul. One aide hesitated. Strategos of the humans. They were lucky, Vale interrupted. We will remind them that luck is not strategy. Elias received the battle report through Holt's encrypted relay before the Aurelians even admitted the losses internally. The raw data told him everything. Human casualties, 0. Enemy destroyed, 3 capital ships. Psychological effect, immeasurable. He forwarded the report to Minister Keiji Rao on Earth with a single line of commentary. They're rattled. Keep the pressure subtle. Within hours, human networks began pushing out carefully edited footage of the engagement. Enough to inspire confidence at home, without revealing the cloaking systems or full tactical spread. Every frame was calculated to make the Empire doubt their read on human capabilities. 3 days later, Elias was summoned to Vale's private strategy chamber. The walls were lined with hollow maps, each shifting with fleet movements and supply projections. Captain Vance, Vale began, his voice smooth, it seems your people are resourceful. I'd say prepared, Elias replied evenly. Vale's gaze sharpened. Do you expect to win a war against the Empire? Elias held his eyes. I expect you'll find the cost unacceptable. The stratego stepped closer, voice dropping. You've mistaken restraint for weakness. If we wished, your species would be under Imperial banners by the next rotation. Elias's expression didn't change. And if you could, strategos, you would have already. For a moment, the air between them felt like a drawn blade. Vale finally looked away, gesturing for an aide to bring in the next briefing. The dismissal was clear. On the far edge of Imperial space, humanity's countermeasures expanded. Civilian freighters began carrying disguise sensor arrays to track fleet movements. Mining stations quietly doubled production of refined metals, not for trade, but for hull plating. Covert teams modified long-haul transports into makeshift carriers, capable of launching drone swarms in deep space. Threx coordinated alien contacts willing to sabotage supply depots under the guise of industrial accidents. Holt drilled her crews in simulated ambushes, forcing them to adapt to random environmental hazards and equipment failures mid-battle. Every move was deliberate misdirection. Outwardly minor, inwardly preparing for a war the Empire still thought would be a brief, decisive campaign. The next Imperial offensive came at the Helios Junction, a hub of trade routes connecting Earth's colonies to neutral systems. The Empire expected token resistance. Instead, they found a ghost fleet. Dozens of derelict ships floated in the junction, their transponders broadcasting human distress codes. When Imperial cruisers moved to investigate, half the derelicts came to life. Concealed gun batteries and missile racks unfolding from false hull panels. By the time the Aurelians realized the trap, their formation was fractured. Human destroyers, hiding in the junction's asteroid field, cut through the disarray. The battle lasted 18 minutes. For Imperial ships destroyed, 2 captured. The humans melted away before reinforcements arrived. The lesson was the same as Varys. No safe approach, no predictable pattern. On Vorith Prime, Elias watched the Imperial news feeds twist the defeat into a minor engagement with insurgent forces. But he caught the real signal. Subtle shifts in fleet assignments, the growing gaps in patrol coverage, the guarded tone in military briefings. The Empire was bleeding, drop by drop. In a secure message to Holt, Elias wrote, "They still believe they're in control. That's exactly where we want them." The Aurelians called it containment. Elias Vance called it what was desperation dressed as strategy. In the 3rd month of the war, Imperial patrol routes shifted erratically. Convoys traveled under heavier escort, and once busy trade hubs flickered with shortages. The supply lines that fed the Aurelian war machine were no longer dependable arteries. They had become choke points. At a briefing aboard the EFS Peregrine, Admiral Sarah Holt tapped a hollow map. Red markers showed Imperial fuel depots, weapon foundries, and shipyards. Green markers were human strikes over the past 30 days. They've lost 3 major fuel facilities, Holt said. 2 more running at half capacity. They're moving resources from core sectors to fill the gaps, which means their outer fleets are running thin. Commander Threx, leaning against the table's edge, added, Merchants are refusing contracts to Imperial ports. The moment one of their convoys leaves the docks, half the sector bets on how long before it gets hit. Elias studied the map. Fear spreads faster than any weapon. The more they flinch, the more ground we take without firing a shot. Holt smirked. We're not exactly avoiding shots either. True, Elias said, but each one is to count twice, once in damage, once in the doubted plants. The next operation targeted Crydon Shipworks, a fortress-sized station orbiting a cold, dead world in the Zero Belt. Imperial Command believed it untouchable. Its location deep in secure space, its defenses designed for fleet-scale sieges. Elias's plan didn't involve a siege. Under guise of a captured freighter, his strike team approached with transponders broadcasting Imperial salvage codes. The ship carried containers marked as KRVA biological samples, the kind no inspection crew wanted open without full containment. Inside those containers were armed infiltration drones, their exteriors disguised as quarantine pods. Once docked, the drones deployed in silence, slicing through bulkheads and security doors with precision. They planted charges on fabrication bays, fuel reserves, and shield generators before transmitting a single tone. The all clear. From a nearby asteroid shadow, human missile frigates launched a single coordinated volley. The warheads didn't need to breach shields. The charges inside the station took care of that. The Crydon shipworks erupted in a chain of explosions visible from the planet's surface, a sun blooming and dying in moments. On Vorith Prime, the destruction caused ripples through every layer of Imperial society. Vale Corix faced the Council with clipped words and a jaw set in stone. The humans cannot maintain this tempo, he declared. They are striking from desperation, not strength. Each attack depletes them. Some delegates nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. One dared to speak. Strategos, their raids have reached systems once considered secure. If they can reach Crydon, what stops them from? Nothing. Vale snapped. Unless we commit fully to ending them. Half measures are what invite such insolence. Elias watched the session from the gallery, noting every flicker of doubt in the room. The Empire's leaders weren't united anymore. Cracks were forming. Later, in a dimly lit service corridor beneath the spire, Elias met Threx and a contact from the very League, a minor trade power with grievances against the Empire. The Veari, a tall, crystalline-skinned figure named Sarek, spoke in a voice like breaking glass. My ships can redirect cargo, Sarek said. Fuel, munitions vanish en route, but there will be a price. Name it, Elias replied. Post-war, we get unrestricted trade in human space. Elias nodded without hesitation. Done. Sarek's facets caught the light in what might have been satisfaction. Then the Empire will soon find its warehouses emptier than its promises. Weeks passed, and the campaign shifted further into Imperial territory. Human stealth cutters sabotaged communications relays, leaving frontier fleets blind. Mining stations exploded in accidents traced to faulty Imperial oversight. Even Core World factories reported unexplained breakdowns. Each success was followed by silence, no claims, no gloating, just the knowledge that nowhere was safe. Vale responded with force. He recalled fleets from less volatile sectors, stripping defenses from distant colonies to reinforce the war front. The move shored up immediate security, but spread discontent. Colonies long loyal to the Empire now grumbled about vulnerability. In a secure exchange, Holt sent Elias a message. They're moving pieces faster than they can keep track. One more hard push and they'll start tripping over themselves. Elias replied, then let's give them the push. The target was Jorith Prime, an industrial moon supplying more than a quarter of the Empire's antimatter reserves. The operation would be riskier than Crydon, heavier defenses, more layered patrols. Holt led the fleet action, drawing away half the system's defenses with a feigned assault on the outer mining colonies. While the Imperials scrambled, Elias and Threx's infiltration unit rode in on a disguised cargo hauler, slipping into the moon's maintenance ring. Once inside, they deployed charges not on fuel tanks, too obvious, but on coolant systems for the antimatter containment fields. When the coolant failed, the automated safety protocols shut down production, fearing catastrophic overload. The effect was immediate. Antimatter output collapsed, convoys sat idle, and half a dozen Imperial fleets were left waiting for fuel that wouldn't arrive for months. The blow hit Vale harder than any lost battle. Without steady antimatter supplies, his fleets couldn't sustain deep operations. The Council demanded explanations, but his answers grew shorter, colder. In his private chamber, Vale studied reports in silence. His aides avoided his eyes. "They are bleeding us," one finally said. Vale's voice was a whisper. "Then we will cauterize the wound." Elias read that line in an intercepted message hours later. He knew what it meant. Vale was preparing to gamble everything on a decisive strike. In the quiet of his quarters, Elias poured a glass of water, watching the ripples settle. Every move so far had been about forcing the Empire into overextension, drawing them into a place where numbers couldn't save them. If Vale wanted an endgame, Elias was ready to choose the battlefield. The battlefield was quiet, too quiet for the amount of blood just spilled. Smoke drifted to the collapsed skylights of the Imperial Hall, mixing with a faint metallic tang of scorched steel and burned flesh. Every breath carried the weight of something final. Colonel Ilian stood among the ruins, leaning heavily on his dented plasma spear. His fur was matted with soot, his scales cracked from the heat. He had lived through 3 interstellar wars, but never had he seen this, an enemy not just defeating an army, but unmaking his will to fight. The humans moved through the wreckage in small squads, silent, efficient. They didn't cheer, didn't boast. They checked their wounded, gathered weapons, marked safe paths from medevac drones. No wasted motion, no ego. General Arden walked at their head, unscarred, uniform crisp despite the combat. He glanced at Ilian as if taking inventory, not of the alien's injuries, but of his resolve. "You're alive," Arden said flatly. "Barely." Ilian's voice carried a low rasp. "I told them. I told the Empire what would happen if they faced you." Arden's expression didn't change, and they didn't listen. "No." Ilian straightened, ignoring the stabbing pain in his side. "They believe your kind were a novelty, soft, untested." The human general stepped past a smoldering support column, surveying the fallen Imperial Guard. His voice was measured, without triumph. "They thought war was about strength," Arden said. "It's about will. Strength breaks. Will doesn't." Outside, the sky churned with the gray haze of burning vessels. Somewhere in the distance, an Imperial war cruiser was collapsing into the atmosphere, its flames painting streaks of orange across the clouds. The sound reached them several seconds later, a deep, shuddering roar. Ilian watched the human squads dismantle the last of the automated defenses. "You could take the capital by sundown." "We could," Arden agreed. "But we won't." The alien frowned. "You're stopping? After this?" He gestured to the wreckage, the bodies, the shamed silence of the once proud hall. Arden's gaze swept over the destruction. Victory isn't about annihilation. If we end the Empire here, we create a martyr's myth. Instead, we'll leave them with something worse. Ilian tilted his head. "And that is?" "The knowledge that they were beaten and spared." A low, almost reluctant chuckle escaped Ilian's throat. "You fight like predators, but you think like strategists. No wonder they fear you." Arden's mouth curved just enough to suggest a smile. "Fear is a poor foundation for peace, but it's a good start." From the far side of the hall, a young human officer jogged up, his boots crunching over shattered crystal tiles. "Sir, comms are open. Imperial Command is requesting terms." Arden didn't move immediately. He looked at Ilian again, his eyes steady. "You'll speak for them?" Ilian blinked. "Me? They'll brand me a traitor." "They'll brand you a survivor," Arden replied. "And they'll listen, because you were here. You saw." The alien warrior felt the weight of the unspoken truth. He had seen. He had watched the Empire's elite crumble in hours. He had witnessed humans move through chaos with surgical calm, each soldier trusting the other's judgment as if they shared the same mind. He stepped toward the comm station, pausing only once a glance at the human squads outside, already pulling back in disciplined order. No looting, no gloating, just departure. The comm crackled as Imperial Command came through. The voice on the other end was sharp, trying to mask desperation. Ilian report. He leaned over the mic, letting the silence hang for a beat longer than necessary. It's over. Over? We have reserves. They'll die, Ilian interrupted. And for what? Pride? This isn't a war you can win. I stood here. I watched. You think you understand humans because you've seen their technology. You don't. Their strength is not in their ships, their weapons, or their numbers. It's in their refusal to break. The voice faltered. And the terms? They'll let us live, Ilian said, his gaze fixed on Arden, if we stay out of their way. Static filled the gap before Imperial Command replied. We will consider. You'll do more than consider, Ilian said. You'll obey, because if they come again, there won't be anything left to surrender. He cut the channel without waiting for an answer. The words had been spoken. The choice was theirs, but the outcome was already written. Arden approached. You spoke like someone who understands. I understand survival, Ilian said, and I understand that mercy like this is more terrifying than slaughter. The human general regarded him for a long moment. Good. Then you'll help us keep it that way. Outside, the sound of engines rumbled through the fractured walls. Dropships rose into the sky, their silhouettes disappearing into the haze. The humans were leaving, just as they had promised. Ilian stood in the center of the ruined hall, the silence pressing in. Around him, the remains of the Empire's pride lay shattered. And in the stillness, he realized something that chilled him more than the battle had. The humans hadn't just won a war today. They had planted a seed.